I dús bara bhhatlam a bhuichas a churanúil don Teachta Collins agus fórne na heficha a socht an sár obair atá déanta aici an mBille seo a chorascóra os ar góir. Bun agus bar an scéal ná an prósis éascú onas go mbeidh oibrí an an ballríocht I Garcumann má tá sé sin ag teastáil. Agus an nud atá I gceist ná dúlgus a chur ar na fostaithirí má sé sin an nud atá ag teastáil. Níl I gceist ach mBille tharbh gearr agus siimplí de bhír atá I gceist. Ar a laghad, má tá deacrachtaí ag an rialtas ó híomh an mBille seo go ba cordómh lígint don 100 meile agus na feibanna sin oibriú amach. I want to thank Deputy Collins and her team for this bill. It's a short bill, 10 sections, and bun agus bar an mBille to make it easier for workers to become members of unions if they request that to the employer, and the employer has a certain time within which to do that and pass on the subscription. I attended an AV room presentation yesterday, and most of the unions were represented there, and I understand they're all behind it, as is the Congress of Trade Unions. And I actually sat there with my mouth open, Minister, because I thought, such a basic entitlement, we really shouldn't be fighting for this. If there are practical difficulties, as the Minister has now outlined, they should be teased out at the next stage, at the committee stage. It's quite easy to table amendments, and the members over in the rural community, I shared their concerns when I was at the AV room yesterday in terms of the burden on employers, but there are many ways of dealing with that. We're talking about bigger employers, I understand, and so you could have an amendment that business over a certain number of employees, and we wouldn't be putting an unnecessary administrative burden on the small business that I fully support. They're all over the city in Galway and in the county. That's one easy way of dealing with it. And then the Minister's speech earlier on never mentioned union busting, and you, Minister, has sort of thrown it back to Deputy Collins in the words she's used with union busting. That comes directly from the EU directive. Article 16, the directive that you have to make sure is law by November. No mention from either minister. Is that going to happen? Is that deadline going to be met? And then we look at Article 16 of that, and they talk about the huge problems faced by unions, the reducing number. In Ireland, we've only 33% in unions, and they talk about the difficulty because of union busting. Now, I ask you to read that, because there's an Article 4 talking about conditions and an Article 16, which Deputy Collins has already read out some of it. In particular, as a consequence of union busting practices and the increase of precarious and non-standard forms of work, and so on. So that's where that word came from. That's the EU, that bastion of neoliberalism, telling us that there's a practice going on of union busting. And we know that anecdotally in Ireland as well. We've many examples of a company being set up or coming to Ireland specifically to bust unions. And so it's disingenuous in the extreme to table an amendment like this, which is anything but an amendment, because it's saying we don't agree with this. And then you give reasons of constitutionality. Good Lord. There's nothing in the Constitution in relation to this. It is not about collective bargaining. It is not about forced recognition. It's about easing the process of allowing members to join the union. And the irony of that is, as a TD and all the staff here, we benefit from unions fighting on our behalf, and we're all about to get an increase 2 to 3% in the public sector, some of us getting more than others, albeit, which is an argument for another day. And what we want to do here is extend out, extend and make it easier for all workers to benefit from that. There's nothing here asking for instant recognition or collective bargaining, just an easing of the process. And what's more, the evidence has come from the unions, the evidence has come from the figures of declining union numbers, and the evidence has come from all of the stories we're hearing back about making it extremely difficult. So those companies that did it and passed on the subscriptions wouldn't pass on the increased subscriptions. Can you imagine using that tactic? And so the members fell into arrears. Or when somebody exerted their rights or went out on industrial strike, the union subscriptions were stopped. That practice is totally unacceptable. So, Minister, I know your heart is behind this, and yet you're standing over an amendment that's totally without any grounding, and not allowing this to go and be presented at a committee and debated out, so the concerns expressed by Matty McGrath and Sean Kenny and his colleagues could be teased out. Thank you.